From the valleys of Wales to the bright lights of Las Vegas, Joe Calzaghe built one of the most untouchable records in boxing history, and he did it the hard way. Undefeated, unbeaten, unbroken. This is the fighter who ruled the super middleweight division for a decade, took on the best champions of two weight classes, and walked away without ever being knocked out, stopped, or beaten. Slick, relentless, and armed with one of the fastest punch outputs boxing has ever seen, Calzaghe didn't just win, he overwhelmed. In this top 5, we're counting down the defining victories that turned a proud Welsh champion into a pound-for-pound great. From brutal wars in Britain to legacy fights on American soil, these are the nights that proved Joe Calzaghe belonged among the all-time elite. Because when the talking stopped and the punches started, nobody could live with the pride of Wales. Number 5. Robin Reid, 13th February, 1999. Before Joe Calzaghe was an American pay-per-view star, before the world accepted him as elite, he had to survive the night that almost derailed everything. Robin Reid was no ordinary challenger. A former WBC super middleweight champion, he had never been stopped, never been knocked down, and was still in his physical prime. More importantly, there was bad blood. Reid had refused to unify with Calzaghe when he held the WBC belt, and Joe never forgot it. Calzaghe came in throwing his trademark blistering combinations, arms moving like a blur, peppering Reid with volume. But Reid was dangerous, thick-set, powerful, and patient. He kept finding Calzaghe with heavy right hands that snapped Joe's head back and shook him in ways no opponent had before. One of those bombs at the end of round 9 was among the cleanest shots Calzaghe ever took in his career. What made this fight special wasn't dominance, it was survival. Reid forced Calzaghe into clinches, pushed him back, and turned the bout into a gritty, uncomfortable war. The 8th round saw Reid docked a point for repeated rabbit punches and low blows. But even with that deduction, the fight was still razor thin. In round 11, they stood toe-to-toe and traded, Calzaghe refusing to back down, as Reid tried to bully him into submission. After 12 hard rounds, the judges were split. 2 had it 116 to 111 for Calzaghe. 1 had it 116 to 111 for Reid. It was the closest Joe Calzaghe ever came to losing his undefeated record. This win edges out the Roy Jones Jr. fight for a reason. Reid was in his prime, dangerous, and fully committed to winning, while Jones, years later, was no longer the fighter he once was. Against Reid, Calzaghe didn't just win. He proved he could be hurt, tested, and still find a way to survive. This was the night Joe Calzaghe learned how to win when Plan A wasn't enough. Number 4. Chris Eubank, 11th October 1997. Before Joe Calzaghe was a world champion, he had to go through a British legend. After Steve Collins withdrew and retired, the vacant WBO title suddenly became available. And standing in Calzaghe's way was Chris Eubank, a 2-time world champion, a man forged in wars with Nigel Benn and Michael Watson, a fighter who simply did not break. Calzaghe was just 25 years old and 22-0, still unproven at elite world level. But from the opening seconds, he made a statement, dropping Eubank almost immediately with a lightning-fast combination. For a moment, it looked like it might be easy. It wasn't. Eubank got up and dragged Calzaghe into something he had never experienced before, a punishing, relentless battle of attrition. The pace was brutal. The exchanges were vicious. This was no showcase. This was survival. Eubank pressed forward, soaking up shots and forcing the young southpaw into deep waters. Years later, Calzaghe admitted that by the halfway point, he was exhausted and unsure he could keep going. This was the first time he had been to what he called a dark place. But this is where champions are born. Calzaghe dug deep, then deeper, finding 2nd, 3rd, and 4th wins as Eubank continued to push, looking to break him. Neither man gave an inch. It was a true test of heart, endurance, and will. After 12 grueling rounds, Calzaghe emerged with a clear unanimous decision, with scores of 118 to 110, 118 to 109, and 116 to 111, capturing his first world title and proving he belonged at the highest level. This wasn't just a win. It was the night Joe Calzaghe proved he could survive hell and still come out champion. Number 3. Jeff Lacy, 4th March 2006. This was the night Joe Calzaghe stopped being overlooked and started being feared. The fight was billed as a super middleweight unification, but in reality, it was sold as a coronation. just not for Calzaghe. Jeff "Left Hook" Lacy was the American wrecking ball, the IBF champion, the so-called next Mike Tyson. Younger, stronger, hyped, undefeated, and according to most of the boxing world, about to run over the long-reigning WBO champion from Wales. Even in the UK, many doubted Joe. And behind the scenes, he was fighting more than just an opponent. His left hand was damaged from a recent break, and he seriously considered pulling out. Instead, he walked into the Manchester arena and delivered one of the most devastating boxing masterclasses ever seen. From the opening bell, Calzaghe made Lacy look completely lost. The jab snapped his head back. The combinations never stopped. The angles were flawless. The pace was unbearable. Lacy couldn't cut off the ring. He couldn't land clean. He couldn't breathe. He was being taken apart by speed, volume, and precision he had never faced before. By the middle rounds, the fight had turned into something uncomfortable to watch. A supposed elite puncher being dismantled in front of the world. Calzaghe wasn't just winning. He was humiliating a man who had been picked to beat him. After 12 one-sided rounds, Joe walked away with the IBF, WBO, and Ring Magazine belts. And Jeff Lacy was never the same fighter again. This wasn't just a victory. This was Joe Calzaghe announcing himself to the world as a pound-for-pound great. Number 2, Mikkel Kessler, 3rd November 2007. This was the fight that finally settled the super middleweight throne. Joe Calzaghe had ruled the WBO belt for 9 years. He was undefeated in 43 fights, a longtime champion, and already a pound-for-pound star. But Mikkel Kessler was the man standing in his way of undisputed dominance. The WBA and WBC champion, unbeaten, powerful, and widely regarded as the second-best super middleweight on the planet. Winner takes everything. The stage could not have been bigger. 50,000 fans packed into the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, with Calzaghe fighting in front of his home nation in the most important bout of his career. The opening rounds were tense and technical. Kessler had success early, especially in the fourth, when sharp right uppercuts snapped Calzaghe's head back and showed that the Dane's power was real. For a moment, it looked like Joe might be in serious trouble. But as the fight wore on, Calzaghe did what he always did. He raised the tempo to a level no one else could live with. His footwork began to create angles. His hands never stopped moving. Flurries came in waves. Kessler had the heavier shots, but Calzaghe was drowning him in volume. By the later rounds, the Dane was fading under the relentless pressure as Joe kept him pinned on the back foot, forcing him to fight at a pace he couldn't sustain. After 12 hard, high-level rounds, the judges were clear. Calzaghe won by unanimous decision. The victory unified the WBA, WBC, WBO, and Ring Magazine titles, and cemented Joe Calzaghe as the undisputed king of the super middleweight division. A champion not just of belts, but of his era. Number 1, Bernard Hopkins, 19th April 2008. This was the night Joe Calzaghe crossed the final frontier. By 2008, Calzaghe had already cleaned out super middleweight boxing. He was unbeaten, unified, and regarded as one of the best pound-for-pound fighters on the planet. But there was still one thing missing from his resume, a defining victory in America against a living legend. Bernard Hopkins was exactly that. The 43-year-old Hopkins was the ring light heavyweight champion, a master of survival, control, and psychological warfare. Before the fight, he turned the build-up toxic, doing everything he could to get inside Calzaghe's head. From the opening bell, he tried to drag Joe into a slow, ugly, clinch-heavy fight designed to break rhythm and patience. And early on, it worked. In the very first round, Hopkins dropped Calzaghe with a short right hand. Blood appeared on Calzaghe's face. The crowd went quiet. The message was clear. This was no routine fight. Hopkins continued to smother, foul, hold, and frustrate. Every time Calzaghe tried to unleash his famous combinations, Hopkins tied him up, leaned on him, and slowed the tempo. It was exactly the kind of fight Hopkins had built his career on. But as the rounds passed, something changed. Hopkins began to fade. Calzaghe, 7 years younger and in far better condition, kept pushing. His footwork improved, his volume increased, and while Hopkins still landed occasional counters, he was being outworked, round after round. By the championship rounds, Calzaghe was clearly in control. The 10th round brought controversy when Hopkins went down from a body shot he claimed was low. He was given the full 5 minutes to recover, but even after the break, Calzaghe kept coming. Hopkins tried to rally in the 11th, but Joe stood his ground and fired back. After 12 tense rounds, the verdict was in. Joe Calzaghe had beaten Bernard Hopkins. Two judges had it clearly for Joe. Even HBO's ringside scorer agreed. Against one of the smartest, toughest fighters of the modern era, in his own country, Calzaghe had won a second world title and proved that his greatness wasn't confined to Europe. This wasn't just a win, it was validation.